Welcome to Banjo Strings and Drinking Gourds, How American Culture Came to Be, the podcast of the Frontier Culture Museum of Virginia. I'm Alex.
And I'm Rachel. Today, we're going to talk about Christmas trees. Last year, we did a podcast on the history of Christmas celebrations, and now we're going to focus on one aspect of the celebrations, and that is a Christmas tree. This also dovetails nicely with our earlier holiday episode from this month, and if you haven't checked that out, go check out our dramatization of the 19th century story, The Peterkins Christmas Tree. But now we're going to tell you why Christmas trees have become such a quintessential Christmas decoration, and to many, they're the most essential decoration for the Christmas season. We conducted a quick poll among museum staff asking what's the one item that represents Christmas to them, and half the staff said the Christmas tree. A few of the other answers included Santa Claus, a nativity scene, candles, and the funniest answer, from an interpreter who shall remain nameless, was credit card bills. Yet a whole podcast on Christmas trees, I'm not entirely sure, so why are we doing this, Alex?
Truthfully, I never really thought much about Christmas trees at all until my first Christmas as a married person many years ago. When I was single, I never decorated my apartment for Christmas and was surprised my wife wanted a Christmas tree in our little apartment for our first Christmas as a married couple. She was mad at me when we finally got the tree for cutting too many branches off before I got it into the stand, but the tree was very nice. A few days later, I replied to her, "It seemed more Christmassy with the tree," and my wife saying, "I told you so," got me wondering, why is an evergreen tree, really a dead tree with strange ornaments that has nothing to do with the Christmas story, become the main Christmas decoration for Christmas? Christmas trees are in churches, stores, the museum visitor center, the lecture hall, and just about every public building in the United States. The decorations of our trees are also random and all over the place, and again have nothing to do with Christmas. So I really wanted to know why and how did Christmas trees become the quintessential Christmas decoration?
Now, I'm curious as to what you found out about the trees, but honestly, I really do just like the way they look. There's a variety of Christmas trees. Some are very elegant, some can be considered tacky. The store Christmas trees are often commercial and sterile, and yet some trees are just beautiful with tasteful ornaments, and really they just kind of make a room stand out and look nice. Everyone, of course, seems to have their own taste, from antlers to feathers to fragile glass balls.
Rachel has just answered the why part of Christmas trees, and it is simply trees look nice. Luckily for the podcast, there's more to the story, and we will get back to why, but really after doing lots of reading on trees, the answer is simply evergreen trees look nice.
Now, as I mentioned, last year we did a podcast on the entirety of Christmas traditions, and we discussed that Europeans for thousands of years have been bringing greenery into their homes during the midwinter to remind themselves of everlasting life and that the sun will return and spring will soon be here, but it also just made their homes look and smell nice.
Yes, and some of this greenery was evergreen branches. The Romans during the Saturnalia festival would nail evergreen branches and small evergreen trees on the outside of their houses for the festival. The early Christians just adapted the midwinter festivals and made them part of the Christian celebration, and over time the bringing of greenery into the home was considered part of the Christmas celebrations of Christmas. Now the question is, when did someone bring a tree into a home or church as a Christmas tree? The answer is probably unknown, but two places claim to be the home for the first Christmas tree, and surprisingly they are not German. Latvia and Estonia both claim to be home to the first Christmas trees. A merchant guild, House of the Black Heads, in Riga, Latvia in 1510 brought a tree into the town, decorated it, and then surprisingly burnt it down. The same guild that in Tallinn, Estonia, allegedly did it earlier in 1441. Now, here's the interesting part. Historians point out that these trees might be part of a different festival and have nothing to do with Christmas.
Yes, and there's also the Scandinavian tradition of topping out a new building. So usually when the last beam is installed in the new building, or sometimes when the roof is complete, it becomes a very common practice in Northern and Central Europe to add a tree or a leafy branch that's placed on top of the topmost beam in the structure. The tree is often decorated sometimes with flags or streamers, toasts are drunk to the building, and a meal for all the workers happens. This is an ancient custom to initially appease the tree-dwelling spirits, thank them for the use of their timbers, and it evolves over time to become a Christian blessing for the newly built structure. The Estonian and Latvian trees might is the key word here, be part of these type of traditions.
So this brings us back to German-speaking areas to figure out when the first Christmas tree was put up as a Christmas tree. The simple question, does a branch count as a tree? I say no, branches are not trees, similar but not really the same.
But it's really not that simple. For example, branches were put onto the summer beam in German architecture, which is actually the central beam of the house and thought to represent the world tree. It's considered the heart of the house. And tacking on new branches or green branches of evergreens represents the hope for new growth for the new year. Additionally, the Zuckerbaum, which we talk about often at the museum, which means sugar tree, were just branches that were put into a crock and then decorated with various cookies, which were then eaten by the children on Christmas Day. I would argue that while it's not a tree, these branches kind of represent the trees, and the customs go back hundreds of years, and especially can be found in places where the common people were not allowed to cut down trees.
Well, maybe the idea of decorating a tree was not new, but it was still a branch. The museum has a copy of articles called Extracts of Christmas in the Palatine by Helmut Schiebark in German, and a few of the German-speaking staff members have translated the article a few years ago. The article writes about laws passed in various towns from 1448 onwards of citizens' rights to cut fir trees up to 8 feet during the Christmas season. There were evidence of Christmas trees being sold in Strasbourg in 1539. The first documented Christmas tree, really the first Christmas tree that was written about in a document, was in Strasbourg in 1605. The tree was a fir and was decorated with multicolored paper roses, apples, wafers, gold foil, and sweets. Christmas trees were becoming popular on both sides of the Rhine River and among all religious groups, that you begin to have towns and villages passing laws banning the cutting of evergreen bushes. Salzburg passed a law in 1755 banning cutting of Christmas trees. The turnaround seems to be because too many people were now cutting down trees in winter.
Interestingly, apples are often used as decorations for Christmas trees, not something you typically find on a fir tree. This comes from the Adam and Eve dramas that have been performed in German-speaking areas since the Middle Ages. Often there's a fir tree on stage, known as the Tree of Life, with apples as decorations. Folklorists believe this Tree of Life transfers over to Christmas and becomes what we know as a Christmas tree. I'm not too sure about this, but the idea of apples as decorations on Christmas trees goes all the way through the Edwardian period in the early 20th century, with gilt apples being almost a necessity for a well-dressed tree.
There is a concept called invention of a tradition, which argues that a particular culture invents new symbols and ceremonies that help define and reflect its character in the present time. This invention of tradition occurs with Christmas trees. As trees become more popular, it becomes important to justify the reasons why and what it represents. Interestingly, 2 fountain myths of Christmas trees began to be told in the 18th and 19th century. A Protestant fountain myth of Christmas trees and a Catholic fountain myth of Christmas trees. The Protestant myth concerns Martin Luther. One Christmas Eve, Martin Luther is walking in the woods on a cold night. The night is clear, and the stars are sparkling in the nighttime sky. There is snow on the ground. Luther suddenly sees a beautiful fir tree in the distance, and the reflection of the stars twinkle on the branches of the fir tree. Luther is inspired this and brings a fir tree home for his children, decorating the branches with candles, saying, "The candles represent Christ, who is the light of the world and so gloriously illuminated the sky." This sounds wonderful, but it never happened. That we know of, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, but it also doesn't mean popular anecdotes are true. There is no evidence of Luther and Christmas trees. The first Christmas tree noted in Wittenberg occurs in 1737, long after Martin Luther is dead.
The Catholic story, on the other hand, revolves around St. Boniface, the saint who is credited with Christianizing the German-speaking people. In the 19th century, the American author, Henry Van Dyke, wrote the short story The First Christmas Tree, popularizing a common tale, and it goes like this. St. Boniface comes upon a group of pagans one Christmas Eve, gathered around a mighty oak in the 8th century. The oak tree sometimes was called the Jupiter oak, or an oak tree sacred to the god Thor. Whatever pagan god the tree represented, the peasants were about to sacrifice the eldest son of a German chieftain. Boniface cuts the mighty oak down with a single stroke of an axe. The peasants were awestruck and asked him for the word of God. Boniface pointed to the nearby evergreen tree and said, quote, "And here," said he, as his eyes fell on a young fir tree standing straight and green, with its top pointing towards the stars, amid the divided ruins of the fallen oak, "here is the living tree, with no stain of blood upon it, that shall be the sign of your new worship. See how it points to the sky. Let us call it the tree of the Christ child. Take it up and carry it to the chieftain's hall. You shall go no more into the shadows of the forest to keep your feasts with secret rites of shame. You shall keep them at home with laughter and song and rites of love. The thunder oak has fallen, and I think the day is coming when there shall not be a home in all Germany where the children are not gathered around the green fir tree to rejoice in the birthnight of Christ. The people then cut the fir tree and took it to the great hall, decorating with apples, and later made a church of the great oak. St. Boniface is an interesting and fascinating historical figure. However, there's really no mention of Christmas trees associated with Boniface until the 18th century. He's credited with cutting down an oak tree, showcasing his impressive axe skills for sure. And basically, the addition of this idea of the Christmas tree is indicating this is a reformatting of an older story to justify a more modern tradition.
While the reading on Christmas trees is limited and confusing, the custom of decorating with Christmas trees was popular in the Rhine areas, and it seems most of German-speaking world by the end of the 18th century. Now we are going to focus on how the trees came to Britain and the United States.
We will start with Britain, and the limited evidence seems to suggest the British were not decorating with trees in the 18th century. This is also the time when Christmas customs are declining and becoming less important in society, more focused on adult carousing than family togetherness. There is evidence that Germans in Britain may have been decorating with trees, but the numbers are small and it made no impact on the British as a whole. The custom that is becoming popular in the late 18th century is the kissing ball, coming back in a resurgence from the medieval period, which is a huge round ball decorated with holly and ivy and stuffed with mistletoe. The ball is hung in the hall or the main room of the house, and one is allowed to kiss someone as long as there are berries in the mistletoe. When the berries are gone, the kissing stops.
The story of the Christmas tree in Britain is the story of two queens, one extremely popular and the other one not so much. The first documented Christmas tree in England was introduced by Queen Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz, the wife of King George III. There are records of Queen Charlotte decorating a yew tree branches in Kew Palace and Windsor Castle. In 1800, she decorated a yew tree at the Queen's Lodge in Windsor for a children's party. Dr. John Watkins, who went to the party, wrote, "From the branches of which hung bunches of sweetmeats, almonds and raisins in papers, fruits and toys most tastefully arranged, the whole illuminated by small wax candles. A few rich families copied the Queen, but on the whole the custom did not catch on at this time in England. The main reason is the Hanoverians were not popular monarchs."
The popular monarch who popularized the Christmas tree in Britain and also the United States was Queen Victoria. She was married to Prince Albert from Saxe-Coburg, now in Bavaria, Germany, in 1840. It seems from this point onwards the royal family had a Christmas tree each year. The royal Christmas tree of 1848 was drawn in a colorful print that was published in the Illustrated London News as, quote, "The Queen's Christmas Tree at Windsor Castle," unquote. This print was reprinted all over Great Britain and even in the United States. The print shows the Queen and Prince with their young children gathered around a beautifully decorated tabletop tree surrounded with presents. The drawing was republished in Godey's Ladybook in Philadelphia in December 1850 with a few changes. The Queen lost her crown, Prince Albert lost his mustache, in order to make them both look more American. The family and the look of the print were of a successful middle-class family. If you compare that print to any of King George III and Queen Charlotte, there's a noticeable difference in how the royal family is presented to the public, and really it's no mystery to see which one the public adored. Consequently, everyone who was anyone in England from the later 1840s started bringing in trees and decorating them for Christmas. Slowly, the custom worked its way down to the working poor, and by the end of the century, Christmas trees were an essential part of an English Christmas. Charles Dickens, in A Christmas Carol, published in 1843, however, never mentioned a Christmas tree. Sadly, also, the Christmas ball or kissing ball suffered and disappeared as a Christmas decoration as the Christmas tree surged into popularity. No surprise, really, given stricter Victorian middle-class morals that abhorred public displays of affection.
Now we get to the United States, and it seems the first Christmas trees were put up by Hessian soldiers in the Revolutionary War. Not surprisingly, no one really copied the tradition at this time. The New England states, who were founded by Puritans, did not celebrate Christmas. It was only in the middle part of the 19th century did Christmas traditions begin to make inroads in these states. Virginia, as a colony and a state, always celebrated Christmas. Therefore, it is no surprise that the first Christmas trees are in Virginia. The first recorded tree in Virginia, and I'm going to give myself some wiggle room as it really is hard to say if this is the first or not, occurs in Williamsburg in 1842. Charles Minigorode in 1842 took up a professorship at the College of William and Mary and boarded with Judge Nathan Beverly Tucker and his family on Nicholson Street, which is located in the historic area of present-day colonial Williamsburg. Charles Minnegrud was a recent German immigrant from Darmstadt in the state of Hessen-Darmstadt and left for political reasons. He had served a 5-year jail term for his progressive beliefs. He was hired to teach ancient languages at William and Mary. Minnegrud, during Christmas, cut down a small evergreen tree and decorated it with the Tucker children with popcorn strings and other handmade ornaments. The many parties and number of students from the college visited the Tucker house over the season, and the tree made an impression. Next year, it was noted in the local paper that many families began putting Christmas trees in their homes. Minnegrud is an interesting person and eventually became the minister of St. Paul's Anglican Church in Richmond. This church, during the Civil War, becomes known as the Confederate Church, as most of the leading figures in the Confederate government went to this church. Minnegrud was preaching in 1865 when Jefferson Davis, who was in attendance, was informed the Union Army had broken through the lines and General Lee no longer could defend Richmond. He left right away, causing the rest of the congregation to do the same. Within a few hours, Richmond had fallen to the Union Army.
A similar story about the Christmas tree occurs in Stanton in 1855. Margaret Proofer, writing in 1915 for Mary Baldwin Miscellany, an alumni publication, explains how her grandparents brought the custom to Stanton. Her grandparents, both recently arrived from different parts of Germany and just married, started working in Stanton in 1855. They lived in a house near the college and put up the first indoor Christmas tree in a window that could be seen from the street. The tree was 5 feet tall and set on a table. Surrounding the table was an elaborate cardboard Lutheran church and fenced-in area made by her grandfather. These scenes are known as a putz and are continued today in certain areas of German descent, such as Old Salem in North Carolina. This also gave rise to the popular Christmas village scene that many people have in their home today. The tree decorations in 1855 were walnuts covered with gold leaf paper, stars, strings of colored paper, candles, and various cookies. Many Stanton people went to see the tree, including many Mary Baldwin students. The next year, it's recorded that most Stantonians had a Christmas tree. Very much a traditional case of an idea emigrating along with the people and becoming more widespread with contact.
When I started researching this podcast, I was hoping every town in the United States had the same story. A recent immigrant from Germany, they put up a tree, all the townspeople would just visit the person, sometimes unexpectedly, and the person regretting putting up the tree in the first place. Yet really, most Americans, when they heard of their neighbors putting up a tree, was all the information they needed to put up a tree. The big explosion in Christmas trees in the average American having one in their homes occurred after the Civil War in the 1870s to the 1900s. Woolworths, basically the Walmart of the late 19th century, early 20th century, started selling Christmas tree decorations in the 1880s.
Despite the history everyone knows, the German Christmas carol O Tannenbaum was not written by Martin Luther or actually very old. Okay, let me backtrack a little bit because the tune is very old, and it's based on a 16th century folk song about a faithless lover. The original lyrics compared someone who was faithless to something that's very faithful, like the evergreen tree. How very thematic for Christmas, that just sets the right mood entirely. The modern lyrics were written in 1824 by Ernst Anschutz and still do not refer to Christmas. Over the 19th century, a few of the lyrics were tweaked and started to be considered a Christmas carol, largely due to the rise of the Christmas tree and the association of the holiday with the evergreen. The carol lyrics moved from O Tannenbaum, with what delight I see you, when winter days are dark and drear, you bring us hope for all the year, to O Christmas tree, you are so very pleasing, how often has not at Christmas time a tree like you given me such joy? Which really, the translation of Tannenbaum, or really fir tree, to Christmas tree is definitely an Americanization or Anglicization of the word as Christmas trees spread beyond the German-speaking world.
Today, Americans buy 25 to 30 million cut Christmas trees a year. The trees on average are 6 to 7 feet and can take 4 to 12 years to grow. There are over 350 million future Christmas trees in the ground right now, occupying over 350,000 acres of land. Generally, for every Christmas tree cut down, 1 to 3 seedlings are planted next spring. Last year, 23.6 million artificial Christmas trees were brought, with over 80% of them made in China. One of the debates over Christmas trees is which is better for the environment, cut trees or artificial trees. Artificial trees use a lot of energy to make and are made mostly from environmentally friendly plastics to make the tree. But if they are reused for over 10 years, and this means they cannot be thrown away, they have to be reused over and over again, they can be more sustainable than having a cut tree each year. However, cut trees on a yearly basis have a much lower carbon impact than artificial trees. If you can buy a cut tree from a local farm, they are very sustainable. Still, some people have suggested that perhaps the most sustainable approach is to replace the tree with something else, like a piece of wood or decorating a ladder that one already owns. Next year, I am going to suggest to my wife, instead of getting a tree, we should just decorate my stepladder. The look she will give me will be priceless. But interestingly, I just Googled stepladder Christmas trees, and it is definitely a thing. Some of the pictures of decorated ladders look very nice. Still, I'm not sure decorated ladders will catch on in the immediate future.
Now hold on, that's actually not a new idea. There's a historic tradition in Germany of the pyramid or the wooden tree. Initially, these were basically 4 sticks leaned together with shelves in the middle, creating a pyramid that could be decorated with greenery, candles, candies. Likely, these were in areas where wood or access to wood was scarce. These have evolved into the German pyramids of today, which can often be seen at Christkindl marks, which are ornately carved wooden structures with scenes that hold candles. Often thin balsa wood blades are placed on top, and the heat of the candles turn the scene so the whole thing can be admired. But basically, the initial design wasn't far off from simply using a ladder.
Well, now I'm going to talk about a holiday tree. Not holiday versus Christmas and the strange culture wars that are going on right now, but a tree that is decorated for most holidays. My sister-in-law, Barb, never takes her artificial Christmas tree down. When Christmas is over, she decorates it as a spring tree. Over summer, it becomes a patriotic tree, and in fall, it becomes an autumn-like tree. I think the various holiday decorations look good, and this holiday tree concept is something I can see catching on. A holiday tree makes the room stand out and look full. My wife is not so sure, but I think Barb really is onto something here.
And that definitely leans into the idea of bringing in a little bit of the outdoors into the inside, which is both a very old idea and also becoming more popular, newfangled idea. And also, in some places where evergreens are scarce, they've turned to more local flora, like the Christmas balm tree or the cactus. Still decorated, still lit, just using a different base. Which gets back to the idea of why do we put, as you say, Alex, dead decorated trees in our houses for Christmas? And the answer simply is, at this point, tradition. We take a plant and we decorate it. It doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter what it looks like, as long as we have some sort of previously living or the idea of something previously living in the house at Christmas.
Yes, tradition in that in northern areas, it seems humans have always brought greenery into homes to remind themselves that spring and life will return. Plus, as you say at the start of this podcast, Christmas trees look nice. In fact, I'll even say Christmas trees look great. They really do make a room stand out, and since it gets dark so early, it does make one feel better to have a lighted tree that smells nice in the house. So thank you for listening, and happy holidays.
We hope you enjoyed Banter, Strengths, and Drinking Gourds. We're bringing your historical episodes twice a month.
And if you enjoyed this podcast, please consider visiting the museum. We are open year-round and can always be found doing interesting things on site. Be sure to check out past episodes of this podcast for more historical topics. Thank you.